What up, Wizards? It's Deb with my evil henchman Igby by my side as usual to look at some Spider-Man cards. Already, yeah, surprise, around midnight tonight, Wizards released every deck list from the welcome decks what are going to come out when this Spider-Man set does. Now, there were a lot of cards in this thing today, 100 plus to look at. If you want to look at them, I'll leave the deck list links in the description. You totally check them out, but I'm not going to go through all of them. We still got to save room for the preview panel coming up this weekend. There's going to be even more new Spider-Man cards. And yes, before you say anything, preview season never ends. New Magic cards are my only friends. I have danced this dance many times in the past, but ne'er have I danced so hard or so fast. Its preview season is tiresome, especially for me as a content creator, because I have to cut content out of this and I'm very tired. But I imagine that even as just a person on the ground that's like, hey, I like Magic, this is really, really tiresome at this point. So Wizards, take note. There's a overexposure problem, I think, going on here. And maybe we want to actually play with the new set. It's not even out yet. We're barely done with preview season. I haven't even done my top 10 list for the thing yet. There's so much work to do with that. And now we're doing the Spider-Man stuff. And I just, geez Louise, macaroni and cheese, like, just give us a second to absorb is all I'm saying. But that said, and all that notwithstanding, there are a bunch of new cards that I want to look at today. I picked 18 from today's whole dump that I thought looked cool or noteworthy in some way or I wanted to talk about or whatever. So it's kind of a normal preview season day worth of cards. Let's go ahead and start checking them out. Now, I was kind of worried that I'd have to decide between starting the day with a new common or a version of Spider-Man or a new mechanic. You know, there's a lot to talk about, but it turns out we can do all that in one card. Here's Spider-Man Web Slinger. 3 mana, 2 and a white for a 3/3 legendary spider-human hero with web slinging for just a single white mana. So what is that? You may cast this spell for 1 white if you also return a tapped creature you control to its owner's hand. So a tapped creature is easier said than done, but maybe you just go first, play a 1-drop, turn 2, swing with it, play your Spooderman. But like, is that just Watch Wolf with extra steps? You're kind of getting a vanilla 3/3 in that case. You know what I mean? I think that the way this is probably best utilized is kind of as a pixie variant or something, you know? Like on turn 2, you could pick up a Pixie, I guess, that's just attacked on turn 2, and then just play the Pixie again. I guess that'd be fine, but later on in the game, you could do that to much better effect, right? Like, you attack with your Pixie, use Spider-Man to pick up your Pixie, and it becomes a 3/3, the Spider-Man. You play your Pixie, and then you pick up an enchantment and play that again to get more ETB value, or maybe like a Grim Bauble. You pick up a Grim Bauble, I think that whole set of plays is like 3 mana, and you've removed a creature and played 5 power, 2 of which flies. So altogether, this could be like decent in the Pixie decks, but just like Ambrosia Whiteheart, you know, that's a legendary card from Final Fantasy you sometimes see in these Pixie decks. I wouldn't expect this to be much more than a 1-of a lot of the time, and honestly, even in the Pixie decks, like, it doesn't pick up anything. It only picks up creatures, and they have to be tapped. But, you know, if you want to replay your Fear of Isolation or your Nurturing Pixie, this is a pretty good option to be able to do it. So I think the ability is kind of cool. The mechanic is neat. I like cost reduction, usually, and I like this form of cost reduction, but it is relatively tough to enable. That said, you station a spacecraft, you crew a vehicle, you have a survivor creature from Duskmourn. Remember those? You know, they do stuff if they're tapped down in your second main phase. There's probably ways to enable this effect, but altogether, I think you just want to be in a somewhat aggressive deck and return an attacker to your hand after it's done doing the thing. So, you know, altogether, I think it's actually a pretty decent package, but that said, once it's on the table, vanilla 3/3, right? So I can see why the card is common, but it does have a potential life ahead of it in standard. It could do some stuff. Now, the next card doesn't necessarily show a new mechanic so much as it shows a new creature type and some synergies with it. We got Tombstone, Career Criminal, cool. This is 3 mana, 2 and a black for a 2/2 legendary human villain. When Tombstone enters, return target villain card from your graveyard to your hand. Villain spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. So I guess we'll call him like Dishonest Rutstein, you know, he can only get back the villains, but he still gives you the cost reduction, which is pretty cool. Honestly, I like any kind of cost reduction, and that might go especially well once we get like Changelings and Lorwyn, once the turn of the year hits. So just remember that stuff like this exists. I guess villains are kind of a cool new creature type to get, and this is a nice set to introduce them in, I suppose, because you could reuse the mechanic later. Not in a comic book set, but it makes plenty of sense to do it here. Altogether, I think it's a nice like Gravedigger variant that looks better in like drafty environments, but I don't know, could still have some stuff to do. It's pretty easy to cast. Cost reduction's great, gives you a card back, like whatever, it's not too bad for the cost. But now that we're done with the new mechanics, quote unquote, in the set, let's look at some normal cards that I nonetheless thought were worth pointing out for one reason or another. Maybe they were cool or somewhat useful, or in some cases, silly and interesting enough that I thought I should put a spotlight on them. Stuff like Spider Rex Daring Dino and Masked Meowers. Those are some silly names for cards, but Spider Rex Daring Dino, this is good to me. I can still take a joke. I still have some, laughter in my heart. This is 6 mana, 4 and 2 green for a 6/6 legendary spider dinosaur hero with reach, trample, and ward 2. So kind of a, colossal dreadmaw, right? But a legendary colossal dreadmaw it's a version of Spider-Man you might like. I would if I had known he existed. I didn't know that this particular Spider-Man variant existed. So I think he's great. In any case, yeah, it's just a much better Colossal Dreadmaw. Is it like standard playable? No, sure, not at all. But still, man, 3 keyword abilities and one of them's trample on a 6/6. Like, okay, man, it reaches up into the sky, blocks and flyers. Like, 6 mana is too much. Let's all be honest with ourselves, and I need to be honest with myself most of all. But, as far as Colossal Dreadmaw variants go, like, it's kind of all right. But Masked Meower over here, again, is a great name. I'm going to like this card. It's a Spider Cat. Awesome. It's a single red mana for a 1/1 Spider Cat hero with haste. Discard a card, sack this creature, draw a card. So, what was it called? Insolent Neonate? Something Neonate, like a few years ago in Standard. It didn't see all the play in the world, but I kind of liked it. And I'm pretty sure that card had Menace. Whereas this has Haste, which I think is the preferable ability, like 9 times out of 10. 7 times out of 10. Something like that. But either way, even though Neonate didn't see all the play in the world and it had like real relevant creature types, I still like stuff like this so much. Like maybe you want to pitch a card into your yard for graveyard count or reanimation or whatever. You just draw an extra card. You can do the ability at instant speed, so you block, sack it. Who cares? Like if it gets blocked and you get in a bad situation, just sack it, draw a card, whatever. You got to have a card in your hand. But again, there's plenty of ways to leverage that. We have these, marauding Mako decks or Mako decks. We have these, Monument to Endurance decks, whatever that thing's called, the one that cares about discarding cards. And like this could be pretty decent. Just have a guy on the table that lets you discard a card and trigger Monument whenever you want to. So I don't know, some cool stuff about this in this environment particularly, but I think it's a solid Magic card generally. Now, a couple of cards I kinda liked, like they didn't even really make the video at first, but I kind of wanted to pump the numbers up to like 18, 20, something like that, and I ended up wanting to throw in Angry Rabble and Lurking Lizards here. Now, Angry Rabble is 2 mana, it's 1 and a red for a 2/2 human citizen with trample. Whenever you cast a spell with mana value 4 or greater, this creature deals 1 damage to each opponent. For 6 mana, you pay 5 and a red, put 2 +1/+1 counters on this guy at sorcery speed. So I don't even care about the activated ability like at all. I mean, it's nice to have a mana sink, I guess, but a 2 mana 2/2 trample, you can improve its power in other ways, with anthems and stuff. And like maybe the trample might matter, but I kind of really like this text right here. Whenever you cast a spell with mana value 4 or greater, everybody pings for 1, all your opponents. So this works kind of like Cut the Beanstalk, right? Am I missing something, or doesn't it work just like Beanstalk, where if I cast a spell that I paid 2 mana for, but it technically has mana value 4 or greater, like I ping everyone, which is not drawing a card. Like, I want to be very clear, I don't think this is like anywhere near as good as Beans. It's just not. But a damage to each opponent is a pretty cool little trigger for being able to, cheat mana or whatever, or even if you're not cheating mana. Let's just assume you're doing it the honest way. Like getting a ping or a point of damage every now and again off doing that might be cool, especially if you have multiples. I don't really have too much hope for this card or the next one, but I just think it's a cool little ability, and you guys know how much I like pinging people, so I gotta point it out. Lurking Lizards, it kind of works in a similar way. This is 2 mana, it's 1 and a green for a 1/3 lizard villain with trample. Whenever you cast a spell with mana value 4 or greater, this guy gets a +1/+1 counter, so, I guess I could play like an Overlord of the Hauntwoods on turn 3, and this guy's like a 2/4. And then I can really start playing like really high mana value stuff, turns after that. And suddenly this guy gets like pretty big, like not necessarily quickly, but he could. If you can somehow cheat on mana like twice in the same turn, give this guy 2 +1/+1 counters, like you're kind of doing something for your money. It's only a couple of mana to get on the board. It's got the built-in trample. So, you throw an Audacity on it and you play like one big guy, and suddenly it's got like real power and toughness it can trample through with. It's not too much of an investment. So altogether, I think this is cool. Don't know that it's going anywhere necessarily, but again, in like a mono green ramp deck or something, I could see wanting to play this as your 2-drop. Again, I don't know if it's going to work out, but this will be, like a 4-power creature just in a couple of turns after you play it. So again, I could see at least an argument. Another couple of uncommons and commons and stuff that I thought might look pretty cool. We got Grow Extra Arms, which is a weird name for a Magic card, and the art is off-putting, so I don't know if I should have used the term, they look cool. I don't know, but I liked this card personally, but I guess I also kind of like Origin of Spider-Man. This looks like it could be alright, but Grow Extra Arms is 2 mana, 1 and a green for an instant. This spell costs 1 less to cast if it targets a spider. Target creature gets +4/+4 until end of turn. So I'm going to try not to say this too much during this video or the next one or Spider-Man preview season when we actually do officially get there. But again, Lorwyn. We go back to Lorwyn like really soon here at the beginning of the year. And that set will probably have changelings. I think me and every other content creator is going to feel like a real goose if that set does not have changelings in it after all this talk. But either way, it probably does. I think Wizards will have made a mistake if it doesn't. So, this would work with like any creature in that set. That's a changeling. So that's cool. We got a couple of changelings in standard right now. And there's some good looking spiders already, in this set. We just saw that 1 mana 3/3 Spider-Man if you do it right. So this could be pretty good in like a green-white deck with that thing. Because on turn, 3, you're giving it +4/+4. It's not so bad. But 1 mana for +4/+4 is a really, really, really good pump spell. Definitely, for sure. But also, you play for 2 mana. That's fine. Like you play it for 2 mana on your Tifa, and then you pop your Fabled Passage, like while this is on the stack, or whatever it is. You pop your Fabled Passage after you get the +4/+4. You double her power, and you just go nuts. So I think this could have, some playability on it, but we'll have to wait and see. We just got like a Might of Old Krosa variant, like a 1 mana +4/+4 in white in Final Fantasy. It hasn't seen too much play, but again, it could at some point because 1 mana for a +4/+4 is always a really good pump spell. And I don't think this is too difficult to enable, especially if we see some good spiders. And I imagine we will. But Origin of Spider-Man over here, 2 mana, 1 and a white for an Saga enchantment. On chapter 1, you get a 2/1 green spider creature token with reach. On chapter 2, you get a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control. It becomes a legendary spider hero in addition to its other types. On chapter 3, target creature you control gains double strike until end of turn. So, okay, 2 mana for a 2/1 reach that does more. Like a 2/1 reach wouldn't be great. By the way, this is technically a rare. But I'm going to put it in this section because I think it's about this relevant. You know what I mean? I think this is a cool little card, don't get me wrong, and I like that it puts an enchantment and a 2/1 into play the turn that it comes into play. You might be able to leverage that in some way in your like Eerie or your Enchantress deck, But also a +1/+1 counter might be decent in some decks. There's like a green-white counters theme in Edge of Eternities, and there's plenty of like counters themes in Standard right now that this might be able to go into just because of that second mode. But as far as the third mode, it's just always good. Like you won't get it until turn 4, but turn 4 is a pretty freaking good turn to get it when you think about it in Standard right now. An attacker getting double strike on turn 4 could be very relevant. So I don't know, a lot I like about this. Give your amazing 3-drop double strike, not too shabby, man. I will say that often this is just going to put the +1/+1 counter on the spider, but that's not too bad. In that case, it's 2 mana for a 3/2 reach, and like I'd pay that, especially with the extra double strike at the end, and the fact that it's an enchantment, and the fact that it can be blinked to get you another spider. And like, I don't know, dude, there's some pretty cool stuff about this little enchantment. So I wouldn't say that it's like slam dunk for Standard play, but there's probably some decks that could get down with it from here to there. But the next 4 cards we'll look at in the lower rarities here are, in my opinion, some of the best cards of the day. Again, not necessarily slam dunks for Standard play, but in this case, we are getting really close. We got to see Scout the City and Spectacular Tactics on this slide here. Scout the City is 2 mana, 1 and a green for a sorcery. Choose 1. Either look around, mill 3 cards. You may put a permanent card from among them into your hand, and you gain 3 life. Or Bring Down. Destroy target creature with flying. So I don't think this is better than, say, Esper Origins in Standard, but I do like the life. I like that it's any permanent. That's pretty sick. You can get a land back if you really want to. So there's a lot of play on this for just 3 mana, or just 2 mana in the first mode. But obviously it's also got like Plummet stapled to it. It's not an instant speed plummet, but sometimes it's a pretty important removal spell. I think when you use this as a removal spell, you'll be super happy that you had this, So the mill decks, again, might have better options. The self-mill decks might have better options, but that remains to be seen, I really like Esper Origins and a couple of other cards that deck is currently using, but none of those can also be removal spells. And I think that could be really, really important, especially when we lose like Cut Down, Go for the Throat, really reliable removal. You might have to be looking everywhere for it. And I think this is a pretty decent piece to main deck, because even if they don't have a flyer to kill, it can still do something really nice for you. So, I'm kind of into it. But next we'll look at Spectacular Tactics, which does sound like some lyrical miracle rhyming, you know what I mean? Like, Spectacular Tactics, I have to get drastic, master it like a maverick, and blast it when I cast it. Like, you can go off with the bars on this, but I'm not sure they're actually bars. This is 2 mana, 1 and a white for an instant. Choose 1. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It gains hexproof until end of turn. Or, you can destroy target creature with power 4 or greater. So, it's just a Valorous Stance variant, but it's a really, really good Valorous Stance variant, A creature with power 4 or greater, you can sometimes catch more stuff in your net than a creature toughness 4 or greater, so I guess there's that. But also, Valorous Stance gives the creature indestructible, whereas this is not just hexproof, but a +1/+1 counter, which is a big deal. That's a Snakeskin Veil, also stapled to a removal spell. That's wild. Valorous Stance is, I believe, in Standard, if I'm not mistaken. I think it may have been printed in Foundations or something. I don't know. But either way, I'm pretty sure that there it is, Foundations. I had to double check. But anyway, I had to make sure, but it is in Foundations. Doesn't really see too much Standard play, but it's the kind of card that could, and I think that this could too. Valorous has seen play in the past, and again, with just the right kind of deck, this could as well. It's definitely a kind of card that you have to pay attention to. But speaking of cards you have to pay attention to, good segue, Dev. We got Unstable Experiment and Eerie Gravestone, which is probably my favorite uncommon of the day. But Experiment over here is 2 mana, 1 and a blue for an instant. Target player draws a card, then up to 1 target creature you control connives. I think it's cute you can make anyone draw a card. That's adorable. But most of the time at instant speed, you're drawing a card for a mana. But if you have a creature out, then the card gets really interesting, because if you have a single creature out, card basically says draw 2, discard 1. So like a Chart a Course at instant speed that doesn't require you to attack. That's really, really good, so long as you can target a creature with it. And if you can, that creature might get a +1/+1 counter. Sure, you might discard a land or something, but maybe you're fueling your graveyard or something like that. You're trying to discard gas or whatever. And then suddenly, 2 mana for 2 cards and a +1/+1 counter, and you put something relevant in your yard. That's a really good deal at instant speed. So again, this is one that I think we should be paying attention to, man. I don't know if the opportunity cost is worth it. Are you putting 4 of this card into your deck? I'm not too sure, but if we keep seeing these decks that have Spyglass Siren on turn 1 or whatever, then I think there's an argument for it at the very least. The card ain't bad, and I'm kind of glad to see Connive back too. I always liked it. But Eerie Gravestone, I think I called it an uncommon a second ago. This is a common. This is 2 mana for an artifact. When it enters, draw a card. You can also pay 1 and a black and sacrifice it to mill 4 cards, and then you can put a creature card from among them into your hand. Now, this would be way, way better if it was just return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand after milling 4 cards. Instead, you have to return a creature card from among those 4. And that makes the card a little bit worse, but still not bad. As long as you have a decent enough creature count in your deck, you'll probably hit something. The ability can activate at instant speed, which I like. And even if you whiff and don't get a creature, that would suck, but you still mill the 4 cards. So any kind of deck that's looking to self-mill, any sort of deck that's looking maybe to pop stuff back to its hand and play it again, this is pretty decent, because you get, the card when it enters the battlefield. So maybe you do that a few times, and then you go looking for a Fear of Isolation or a Pixie or whatever it is that you got in your deck. You got enough creatures to probably hit one. And again, maybe even if you don't hit a creature, it's kind of fine. You know what I mean? Like, the artifact's already done its job a couple of times, drawing you some cards. So altogether, I think this is really, really cool. I like that we keep seeing these sort of prophetic prisms, but better. You know, we saw one in Edge of Eternities already. We saw, I think there's one, Instant Ramen or whatever, in Final Fantasy. So we keep seeing like pretty good effects like this, and I think this is on that list. I think that being able to sacrifice it and maybe get a creature for your trouble at instant speed, not so bad, especially if you get a flash creature. That's especially good. So altogether, I think it's a neat little card, man, and I think it might have some stuff to do depending on like if it can find some synergy. Like, it's an artifact and your graveyard deck cares about artifacts, like something like that, just in the right spot, it could easily see play. But now we move to, I guess, what we're calling the Commander Corner. Just a couple of cards here that I want to take a look at for that format specifically. We got Spider-Man Noir and SP//DR, I assume just Spider, piloted by Barry. Now, Spider-Man Noir is not much, honestly, but again, if we're looking at Commander, you might be able to, make something happen with this. This is 5 mana, 4 and a black for a 4/4 legendary spider human hero with menace. Whenever a creature you control attacks alone, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Then surveil X, where X is the number of counters on it. Now, the Squall deck is a thing I guess some people like to play, in Commander. People tend to enjoy that card. Plus, I guess if you're still putting together some sort of Black-White Exalted thing from 15 years ago, I guess this could go in. But, creatures attacking alone is always kind of an interesting mechanic. Codis could easily attack alone to great effect, and this could go in your Codis deck. And then, you surveil a buttload of cards, and that could be really good. Whether you're trying to put a bunch of cards in your yard, or you just want to, fix your next draw to get the absolute best thing. Like, surveilling 3, 4, 5, or potentially even more, depending on the number of counters are actually on the stinking thing, could be fantastic. I could see some situations in Commander where you could easily cook up, surveil, 15, depending on how big you can get a creature. So, I don't know, man. I think it's pretty cool. And again, I think in the Squall deck, it's a pretty sick little option. If you can put +1/+1 counters on Squall, you're attacking with him, you're getting the value, you're surveilling a bunch. Yeah, man, it could be all right. So, cool little card here, but we'll see if it actually ever does anything. 5 mana might be a little bit of a crunch, But Spider, piloted by Penny over here, is 3 white-blue, 5 mana for a 4/4 legendary artifact spider hero with vigilance. When Spider enters, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Whenever a modified creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So this is available to play in Standard, where we already have Enduring Curiosity, and Enduring Curiosity is a lot better than this. It's got the flash, whatever, but costs less mana. But this still has a semi-curiosity kind of ability on it, and in Commander they really like stuff like this. It's not just Enduring Curiosity, it's Coastal Piracy, Reconnaissance Mission, a million other cards do this in blue. But it's kind of nice to have an ability like this in your command zone. And it's kind of neat in blue-white, where you have ways of putting +1/+1 counters on stuff, but you actually have a lot of other ways maybe of modifying your creatures, like auras and stuff like that. So it might be interesting to brew around this in Commander. I do think that last line of text is really, really cool. And I guess if you have ways of blinking this, you can get a bunch of +1/+1 counters on your guys. Maybe that's a thing you do. But for the most part, I do think that last line of text makes it at least something fun to brew around. And at most, a somewhat powerful card. But Spider-Man 2099 is next, as we're in, I guess, the top 4 cards of the day. Nominally, I guess we got 4 more to look at, and this one could be a Commander specialist, but I don't think so. I think this one actually has some chops in Standard, potentially. 2 mana, Izzet colors, a blue and a red for a 2/3 legendary spider human hero. It has From the Future. You can't cast Spider-Man 2099 during your first, second, or third turns of the game. It has double strike and vigilance. At the beginning of your end step, if you played a land or cast a spell this turn from anywhere other than your hand, Spider-Man 2099 deals damage equal to his power to any target. Not too shabby, actually, right? 2 mana for this is not bad, even if we can't play it until turn 4. This is I don't know, the 3rd or 4th card we've had like this in Magic. There's an Angel, there's a Jace. Now I guess we have this. And even though you don't necessarily want to wait until turn 4 to get your 2/3 double strike vigilance, I guess there's still ways to give it haste and maybe even proc it the turn it comes into play. Like Demonic Ruckus comes to mind. That's an enchantment you can plot for really low mana, and then the turn you do play Spider-Man 2099, you just play your Demonic Ruckus on it, and then bing bang, you've played something from other than your hand that turn. So, you know, we'll pop him for some damage, and it's a little more damage because I think Ruckus gives him a power boost, right? So, and that's what you want to do with this. You want to give it a power boost of some kind. I think it might even work with like pump spells and stuff. Yeah, it does, because it technically still has the plus whatever at the beginning of your end step. But, you know, that could be pretty sick. It's nice with auras and anthems and stuff like that too. You know, I like that it's any target. You can just blow away creatures with this, which might be really, really cool. And it works nicely in decks that care about like playing 2 spells in one turn, right? On turn 4, and you play Spider-Man into another like 2 mana spell. And there's already decks like Vivi that function pretty well while playing multiple spells in a turn. So he's good in those decks too. That's kind of relevant. You know, we don't have Corey Steel Cutter anymore, so decks ain't what they used to be. But still, he will help you very easily cast your second spell in a turn because he's so cheap to play on turn 4. He also triggers off of himself, which I think is neat. Like if you play some sort of Ren's Resolve effect or really any red card draw that like exiles cards, and he's one of them, and you play him, well, and suddenly you played a card from anywhere other than your hand that turn, so bing bang, he'll get to pop something for damage. That's pretty cool. So altogether, lots of ways to use this card, especially in the colors that it's in, you know, like lots of ways to plot and foretell and warp, right? This plays pretty well with warp as well, and a lot of other like adventures, right? Like anywhere other than your hand is actually much easier to trigger than you might think. So pretty easy to just start zapping stuff with this guy, and if you make him any larger, he's suddenly crazy. So I have some faith in this dude. Now we're in the top 3, I guess. Again, this is nominally because I'm not sure that this is the 3rd best card of the day, but it is one that a lot of people are talking about and kind of the marquee card of the day. Here's Peter Parker. This is 2 mana, 1 and a white for a 0/1 legendary human scientist hero. When he enters, you get a 2/1 spider creature token with reach. It's green. You can pay 4 mana, 1 green, white, blue to transform Peter at sorcery speed. And then you get Amazing Spider-Man. This guy apparently costs 4 mana, 1 green, white, blue. So maybe I'm assuming you could also cast it for that cost. Without playing Peter first, you could just cast it for the 4 mana cost if you wanted to. I guess that's what's going on here. But either way, you get a 4/4 legendary spider-human hero with vigilance and reach. Each legendary spell you cast that's 1 or more colors has web-slinging Bant, right? So you play a green, a white, and a blue, and you can do the web-slinging thing with it. Return a tapped creature you control to its owner's hand, and just play the creature from your hand for the 3 mana cost, which could be gross. That could be very, very nasty if you could do it and pull it off. Interestingly, too, you could always tap down Spider-Man somehow, like attack with him or whatever, and then return it to your hand. Return Spider-Man himself to your hand and throw down something huge, you know? So that's pretty cool. Has to be legendary, but there's plenty of ways to do that. You know, throw down a Valgaboth for Bant seems pretty gross, you know. So altogether, I think it's actually like a really, really interesting design on the card. We've seen a bunch of cards like this, especially recently. I'm not saying this is Kona. I'm not saying it's Summoner's Grimoire. I'm not saying it's that new green spacecraft thing I can't remember the name of because it's not even out yet to play. That thing. It's not Smuggler's Surprise, but again, it continues in this vein of like, you can play creatures for way less, man. It continues that, right, trend. And this one usually doesn't happen until like turn 5 or something, so I can't say it's incredible, but I will also say that it could easily help you throw down like 2 giant guys in 1 turn for 6 mana, and it seems worth it, depending on how much mana value you're actually getting, so I kind of like it. And as far as like the front half, okay, so you get 2 guys for 2 mana, right? You know, it's like a Resolute Reinforcements or Gather the Townfolk, Dragon Fodder. You know, we like 2 guys for 2 mana. And even though it's still just 2 power spread among the 2 bodies, at least one of the bodies has 2 power, which is like, we don't usually get that, you know? This also, I guess, like answers the question, like, how much power toughness is just like a guy? Like a normal, like a kind of a weak guy, you know? Like just a normal dude. Apparently we're all 0/1s. Like most of us walking around the street are 0/1s here. Maybe my mask gives me a point of power, but I don't know. I don't know that it does. Well, let's move on to my second favorite card of the day. And if this is just my second favorite card of the day, how crazy is number 1? But Aunt May is here to stay, ladies and gentlemen. A single white mana for a 0/2 legendary human citizen. Whenever another creature you control enters, you gain 1 life. If it's a spider, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So, okay, we get a Soul Warden or a Soul's Attendant or a Hinterland Sanctifier. It's one of these guys. One of these guys. Not as good as, I guess, Soul Warden, but still, yet another one of these. It's going to be playable in Standard, and like we lose Ellis Core, and I'm still like really sad that we lose Ellis Core, but we get alongside Hinterland Sanctifier another one-mana version of this effect, and like I guess the problem is that it's legendary, but there are ways you can turn that into a good thing, you know, like I guess the Sarah Farron decks and other legendary decks need 1-drops, and this is a pretty good 1-drop, you know, like in a legendary deck it goes somewhat well alongside like Aerith Gainsborough, because that is also a legend. It cares about gaining life. It'll proc off of Annie Mae when it comes into play, bars. So there's probably a lot to like about this, you know, even in decks that aren't strictly like I'm trying to gain all the life that I need to gain or whatever. But if you're playing legendary life gain, you've got this into Amalia Benavides Aguirre into, you know, Aerith Gainsborough. So there's a lot of love there in strictly life gain decks that also happen to like legends. But, you know, all I'm trying to say is 1-drop legends aren't too bad because some decks just need a playable 1-drop that is a legend, you know, like, and then Tiny Bones joins up like Orzhov decks or something. It's another 1-drop legend to go along with Tiny Bones. So some cool stuff there, I guess, but mostly it's just really sick to have another Hinterland Sanctifier effect in Standard, both for the Starscape Cleric raise the past decks and for the Hope S-Time raise the past decks. You know, the more 1-drops we have that actually gain you life, the better for a deck like that. So altogether, man, it's just really hyped to have just another one of these. Yet another one of these. And I guess the Gravy text is fine too. Again, it's really good with changelings. I'm going to try to stop doing that, but I'm not going to succeed because the final card we'll talk about today is, I mean, easily my favorite. If you can beat a Soul Warden variant, you got to be pretty good, but this meat certainly does beat it. We got to look at Spider-Ham Peter Porker. We got to find out whatever a spider pig does. So it's 15 years since the Simpsons movie. I think we're finally going to figure it out. This is 2 mana, 1 and a green for a 2/2 legendary spider boar hero. When Spider-Ham enters, create a food token. It also has Animal Mayhem. Come on, man. Other spiders, boars, bats, bears, birds, cats, dogs, frogs, jackals, lizards, mice, otters, rabbits, raccoons, rats, squirrels, turtles, and wolves you control get +1/+1. I like that you could probably make bars out of all the creature types this helps, you know, like spiders, boars, bats, bears, birds, dogs, cats, jackals, lizards, mice, rats. Like, you again, like very easy to form bars out of this. And you almost feel like the Thanksgiving song. Anybody know the Thanksgiving song I'm talking about? You know, the hams, yams, the tomatoes, potatoes, that thing. Like, you kind of sound like you're doing that when you're reading this card. So anyway, that's all fun and games, but whoo! Just about any animal creature type you can think of, save for a few. Don't meme in the comments. It doesn't give pangolins a +1/+1 counter or whatever. And there's probably some interesting ones that this misses, but for the most part, this can just be in like any creature type deck that matters. And by the way, one more time, changelings. I guess we're getting changelings, so this could work with like any creature that happens to be one of those. But first of all, a spider anthem effect. Let's go. I think that's great. I love like what this set appears to be doing for spider decks. Like, even if they're just like spider decks and commander, like your Ishkana deck, it's kind of bummy that like the white cards won't work in your Ishkana deck or whatever. Also, like, okay, bats, fine. Birds, sure, because we just got the Chocobo deck from Final Fantasy, right? So that could go pretty well in that. It goes nicely alongside the, what is it, Valley Quest Caller? I think that's his name, you know. That also gives a bunch of creature types +1/+1. And I think that it gives a lot of the same creature types +1/+1, you know, like bats, birds. This gives like every creature type in Bloomborough +1/+1, right? Like bats, yes. Birds, yes. Frogs, yes, there they are. Lizards, check. Mice, check. Otters, check. Rabbits, check. Raccoons, check. Rats, check. So just like everything in Bloomborough, this helps out even further. That's gross. Wolves, randomly turtles. You know, so when they inevitably do the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Universes Beyond next year, the one they haven't told us about, they're going to do it. This will help out those, but there's also like Turtles in Standard that this works well with. So yeah, it's off color to work well with like some of these creature types, but I don't care. This is like one of my, like, the coolest Anthem effects I've like ever seen. I don't care. Some people are gonna be like, oh, it's a spider pig, it's stupid, it's dumb, and like, I don't have time for that. This is a fun Magic card with, you know, a character that I actually do recognize and kind of have always liked from the Spider-Man universe. So I fully support it. I think that it is a slammer, this particular hammer. I've always been more of a ham guy anyway, you know? Like, we were just talking about Thanksgiving. I will consume some turkey, but where's that ham at? I'm looking for that ham, man. Give me some ham, some Brussels sprouts with the cheese sauce, some squash casserole. Whew, send me, man. That's a good time right there. But anyway, yeah, Spider-Ham looks like probably the best card, sort of, that we got to see from today. But there's a bunch more. You know, like I said, I only picked like 18 that I thought were interesting from today. There's a lot to look at. So if you want to see like Venom or Scorpion, you know, like there's a lot of like your favorite villains and heroes on some of these cards that we didn't really get to today. So if you want to see them all, I'll leave a link in the description to the article where Wizards kind of revealed all these cards. But there's also other links down there. You can check out the Patreon. There's a link to that. Link over to the Twitch if you want to follow. We got some Twitch stuff to do, obviously, so we got some streaming to do. But anyway, just make sure you're subscribed to the channel for all the rest of the Spider-Man previews coming up. Again, preview panel this weekend from what I understand, so there should be more Spider-Man cards, and then Spider-Man preview season will start in earnest, I believe sometime in late August or early September, something like that. So again, stick with the channel. We still got lots of Edge of Eternities content coming out. As far as I know, the schedule for this week looks something like the next video we're going to put up is the Power Dragon. That should come up sometime to the same day this video goes up. Power Dragon, cards we're going to miss when they rotate. We're doing that one with my buddy. Later on this week, I'm going to have a top 10 rotating cards that could have been contenders. Then we're going to do top 10 sleepers in Edge of Eternities, top 10 cards in Edge of Eternities for standard, top 10 commander cards for Edge of Eternities. There's a lot of that content left, so make sure you sub. So I'm going to try to get all that out until by the end of the week. Then we can start looking at decks for Edge of Eternities. So I am a busy boy, a little busy little bee. I've got a lot to do, but this didn't help, just dropping this in all of our laps. But at least we got to see cool new cards, and at the end of the day, that's what I like. So if you like that too, sub to the channel, check out the Patreon, do the stuff. But anyway, y'all, that's Allski Kowalski. So let me know how you felt about the stuff down there in the comments section. Try not to make the entire comments section just about never-ending spoiler season. Yes, you're absolutely right, but also want your actual opinions on these actual cards and what we can do with them. But apart from that, I guess I'm donezo for this onezo. So I'll catch you cats later. I'm Dev from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.